What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Core, covering all things Apple TV Plus. This will be our coverage of Foundation Season 3, Episode 4, The Stress of Her Regard. And longtime listeners might be surprised to hear my voice. My name is Kyle, aka this season, I believe I am Brother Dusk. You're used to hearing Jimmy, aka this season he is Brother Day, but he is on vacation, just like the Brother Day in this episode is going on an extended vacation himself. Our Jimmy is on an extended vacation. So it's just Luke and I here for this episode.
There is one thing I wanted to bring up. We mentioned this at the end of our last podcast, and that was just the IMDb scores of the first 3 episodes. We're obviously recording this one with screener knowledge and haven't the 4th episode isn't out there for the public, so we can only look back at the first 3. And right now on IMDb, it sits at 8.1, 7.6, and 8.2 for the first 3 episodes, which feels low, but it's still
Too low.
It's too low. But like anything in 8 is always just considered great TV just across the board. Definitely should be a little bit higher. I think that this was my favorite episode of the season. And okay, cool. I was a little, I wanted some validation, I guess, that's true, because one, I just watched it like an hour ago, so I'm still fresh off of having seen it. But I think they did an amazing job of making some things, some plot points and character decisions and motivations better in hindsight in this episode. And Foundation's really good at that. Like, they kind of throw you in the middle of things early on in seasons, and they explain how we got there, and then they kind of clean up some things. And I think this episode had some really good moments that is going to make me look back even more fondly on the first 3 episodes. So I think this is the best episode of the season so far, and it sounds like you kind of agree.
Yeah, I feel like almost every scene, it felt like I was so locked into the conversations. It felt like everything was so important that I was trying to capture as much as possible so that it felt like I was understanding what was happening, because the conversations all felt like pretty momentous. And then everything I was watching, I was just enjoying so much too. There was so much fun reveals in here, and we had no MULE this episode.
Besides the Vision, I guess. But yes,
I guess,
no
but like,
MULE.
you know what I mean? Yeah, we're not getting his scenes, and those are usually like, okay, like you got to be paying attention to what he's doing on the screen, because literally anything could change at the drop of a dime. And even without that, it still was absolutely fantastic. I mean, this season just continues to crush it. It's just so good. In the Discord, bingetowntv.com/Discord. There you go, Jimmy. I popped that in there for you. Spaceman 94 said it. I know that they caught up a little bit. They hadn't been watching season 3 week to week. They just caught up pretty much on all the episodes, but it just, the description of being, the show is so sure of itself and knows exactly what it's doing. It's so confident in what it's doing, and it just nails it. It's just so entertaining. It's so fun to talk about. It's so fun to think about.
Well said. And you know us, like, we're just diehard fantasy fans. I'm starting a new sci-fi book. I love Dune. I'm starting the Sun Eater series, and it's all just like in the same realm. And I just find myself thinking about Foundation just while I'm driving and just thinking about TV. So I'm ready to talk about this. There's only 2 planet stops here. We did technically have a new Terminus scene, but we're going to loop that in with everything that happens on Trantor, because it kind of directly leads into more of those scenes. But just because of the order of operations of how Gale moves in this episode, we're going to start on Ignis, the location for the second Foundation. All of our opinions in the mic drop moments that we've been referencing will come out here. So let's just start with one of them that just blew my mind, which was where Big Pritch ended up going after scampering away from the MULE. And I take back almost everything bad I said about Big Pritch, because it just made so much sense why he had to get away from the MULE. And I think me and you were right on it, Kyle. We nailed the fact that he was a mentalic. I know Jimmy was having some other thoughts there, but I think we even convinced him. I feel good about this reveal, but I also feel like there's so much we didn't predict here about Gale and Big Pritch being, I guess you can call them lovers. Maybe it's too early to call them lovers, because they really have, what gets revealed here, have only known each other for 32 days, even though he has been alive through some of the jumps that Gale's been making. But every time she comes out, it seems like they spend time together and they care about each other. But there's just so much that gets just thrown at you right here. It felt like such a sprint. So their initial conversation, I think, is really important, because this is probably the most MULE-centric conversations we get. So pass it over to you of just, did it blow your mind like it did for me?
Yeah, I was so happy though.
Yeah.
And it was, I just loved, and I'm so mad at myself that I watched this in 2 pieces and I forgot to write down who the Watcher is, what his name
Preem.
is.
His name's
Preem.
Preem. Yeah.
Legend. I
Oh yeah.
love like the banter that they had when he's just
Mhm.
like, "This is Inber's ship. Fuck off!" Like it's just so funny the way that
Mhm.
they do it, and he's a beast too. And it's just, I'm so happy that this is what it is. It almost, in hindsight, feels maybe a little obvious, of like how influential Pritch was and like how focused on the mule he was. I think like again, what you just mentioned at the top when we talked about like Foundation's really good at things happen and then you look back on the evidence that was there and it's like, yeah, this makes a ton of sense. Almost you get upset that you didn't say it yourself. I think
Mhm.
the romance aspect was somewhat impossible to guess, but right when he stepped off the ship and like Gale is on the bridge, and I was just like, oh, they're just so clearly in love. Like,
Mhm.
I'm just so excited about all of this. It was just all good shit.
And there goes my Gale and Dawn having some romantic chemistry
Yeah.
theory, which it would have been something I stood on if this didn't happen because of the end of this episode. I would have still sold it on, tried to sell it at least to you. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be the couple. And Gale does a good job of trying to not put too many eggs in that romantic basket of which he called it was like holding too tight, which is smart. She's learning. And one of the other things I'm happy that I was dead wrong on was like, is there any way that Big Pritch was a descendant of Sal, which wouldn't really make sense because that would be like Gale's
Yeah.
grandson. So like
Hopefully
we
not.
throw that out. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just because we
Well,
were
that's
talking
it.
about that him being like a Sal stand-in, and he kind of is
Yeah.
in a way, but not in like a family way.
Yeah. It was funny in that he's almost like a combination of Raish and Sal.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like, obviously at this point he is in love with Gale and he kind of is playing that role that you would assume that Sal might have played, although she's probably too famous or too probably well known within Foundation itself to have played the role that Big Pritch plays, and that he's kind of
Mm-hmm.
undercover in Foundation from the second Foundation. But we've talked about all that of why we kind of made those connections in previous episodes. But we also talked a little bit about Magnifico
Mm-hmm.
and
Maggie.
how he is, he feels like a great plot device to just give us information about the mule himself. But I also like that they went into this conversation. So it's Preem, Big Pritch, and Gale. And they're kind of, having a bit of a debrief. And he's explaining Pritch's that what we kind of had guessed that he is a mentalic and the mule kind of got into his head, and that's how he found out about Gale. I know we talked kind of almost in circles of like, how did he find out what her name is? But
Yeah.
obviously now we know it's quite obvious about how that happened. And I like that Preem, dude, he's a beast. So he was just like, all right, let's just think about this like level-headed. Like it seems clear, like music's important. Like
Mm-hmm.
this guy might be amplifying his powers. We know he's lonely because he's in the club, and we're unknown to him. He's more known to us now, and like he can be made to fear us. And I was like, hell yeah, baby, that's the Watcher that we want.
Yeah, you just pointed out pretty much all my takeaways from that scene. I'm just shocked that it kind of is working out in the way that Big Pritch was the reason that the mule first gets introduced to Gale's
Yeah,
name. So we were kind of wrong, me and you, I think, about the idea that the
we'll
visions
throw Jimmy
that
in there. He's not here to defend
yeah,
himself.
well, no,
He was
Jimmy, I
wrong
think
too.
Jimmy was I thought Jimmy said that he thought the visions happened after, and we were saying it that the visions of Gale would have happened before.
Mm,
Am I wrong about that? Because that was my incorrect guess, was that he was already having the dreams of Gale, because I was trying to figure out a way of saying that
mm,
Big Pritch didn't actually know who Gale was, but
yeah,
it kind of all makes sense now in hindsight. But I was wrong about that, definitely.
yeah. I think we talked too about some potential like weird, like Big Pritch being the mentalic, and like was it like a subconscious like Ignis was
Mhm.
sending out the signals, and like that was one way
Yes.
that we were like maybe it makes sense, but this just makes infinitely more sense. And I think is also, it's a much better thing. Things maybe not the best word, but because we know that Big Pritch at this point, he's in love with Gale. He is apologizing in the scene because he's like, damn, like, we had almost the element of surprise up until this point. Like we had been preparing for the mule, and he had no idea who we were. And I just kind of kicked that in the butt, but that is what it is.
Yeah. We do get the confirmation that the mule still has no idea where Ignis is, and that makes sense because of the vision we've seen 2 times at this point, where he's
Mhm.
literally asking Gale where the second foundation is. And I love that he was able to be so powerful that he affected them as they were viewing the vision through Preem. That was just a really cool moment. I think that's really all I have at this point. It just makes Big Pritch a better character. So that was a little blip in the radar. I think he's totally fine. I was a little harsh on him last episode. But that's what they gave us. So now I feel
Yeah.
much better about his character. I feel much better about everything, like the explanation of why the mule and his interaction went the way it did and why he ran away. It's all better in hindsight now. So ready
Yeah.
to move on if you are.
Yeah, just a shout out to a couple people on the YouTube comments from the episode 3, Mofish and Victor Mina. They kind of were talking about this idea of Magnifico having this maybe greater impact. I know we kind of talked last episode of just he could be that window into the mule, but I think Victor Mina put it in a funny way of like mule powered by clown music, basically. And it feels like that is maybe what's happening here. And I think that that's a very interesting concept. And it
Mhm.
also, I think, it's going to be fun to see how the mule adjusts to that, because we saw him kind of act like, it's whatever, like things are happening of how they should be. But it feels like knowing maybe if it's like a source of his power in a way, that he should be maybe a little bit more upset. So how is he going to accommodate for the fact that he doesn't have
Mhm.
this kind of amplification of what's happening? But
Well,
that's
he's
the future.
probably not as worried about it because he's never met any other Mentalics yet. Besides Big Pritch,
Good
so he's
point.
what would he be scared of? Is like he's a little bit weaker, but still very
Yeah.
much more powerful than everybody else. So, but who knows? He is
Oh,
gonna. I do love the amplification. Like that's just such a cool, just fantasy concept of
yeah.
music being powerful for him. That's really cool.
And the instrument looked cool as fuck. So
Yeah. So, and Maggie will be back in an important way.
yeah.
But this next conversation, it's a quick one. It's the pre and the post pillow talk piece of this all. We get some meta talk here, and this is where we actually they look us straight in the face as audience members and say the third crisis of the Foundation is going to be the civil war between the traitors. We were kind of saying that, then we were theorizing if it was the black hole bomb or if it was going to be the mule himself, but it's actually much more simpler. It's just the traitors and Hober Mallow's descendants clan, I guess if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
It's going to be them versus the Foundation Civil War. So that's cool. They just kind of threw that all out there. And the one thing Gale says is that they still need to, at the end of the day, prep New Terminus or the first Foundation, because if they're not ready, then they're going to fail the third crisis, even with Foundation 2 existing.
Yeah, she even says, and they go as far as to say that Inber is needed to defeat the mule, and then they're going to kill him, which
Yeah,
I thought
that
was pretty interesting.
maybe that's why he's been acting the way he is when he interacted with Ember. He's literally going like a dead man walking kind of thing where he knows
Yeah.
Gale's plan potentially. I don't know. That surprised me. That seemed dark.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. And I think it's funny too that, speaking only for myself here, I was so locked in to the idea that like the mule is the third crisis, especially because and I had just really latched onto this, like season 1 is crisis 1, season 2 is crisis 2. But then I guess that almost then is the opposite argument for what I was believing in, that the mule, we've kind of come to the conclusion that he's not really just a 1 season villain. So then he couldn't have been third crisis to follow that, the season 1, season 2, season 3 thing. But it's just nice to get that confirmation. I think someone else in maybe the Discord or YouTube was kind of saying, like, trying to push us away from the idea that the mule was the third crisis, and the show has been slowly pushing us, and then we get the outward confirmation, which is nice. So I don't have to seem and sound so stupid anymore. But I also really liked this conversation that they have about the future. It almost, again, was reminiscent of her and Sal in a way, of this discussion about whether the future can be changed or not. And we have Big Pritch on the side of it can be, and like believing that it can be in itself is worthy and a good thing, while Gale is on the other side of it, of just like, this stuff is inevitable and it's going to happen, and so on and so forth. And specifically, I just want to call out because they did a good job, I think, this episode of really showing us too, like how Big Pritch isn't just a big hunky body. He's a very, I would say, an intelligent man. And I just really like when they have this conversation about the line of violence is the last refuge of the incompetent, because they've brought this line up, I believe, a few times throughout the series itself. And this seems like the first time anyone's ever actually challenged it. and where Big Pritch says like that is just so far from the truth. You know, if anything, it would be their first refuge of the incompetent because they're incompetent. It wouldn't be their last. It's actually probably the last refuge of the competent itself. I don't know if there's anything deeper in there. I don't know if that's hinting towards anything, but I just liked it. I enjoyed these two's conversations. They just happen at a very like high level of intelligence, it seems.
Yeah, like they do have a little bit more. I think there's 3 scenes of them talking, but it's just character relationship building. And just like you said, like we also learn that he's very smart with numbers, just like everybody else. We
Yeah.
also get that he knew Harry for decades, right? Like he was able to absorb from him directly. And I think that some of the philosophical things you're pointing out about the violence could have rubbed off on him from Harry. So maybe he learned in that way. And that's just nice that we get the full backstory of how much and how in depthly these two knew each other. But more to come for them, I'm sure. Like they're going to be a main centerpiece. Is there any guesses you want to put on the board about their relationship in general? Is it going to last? Are they going to have happily ever after? Is it going to turn for betrayal? Is it going to be used as leverage? It could be anything, right?
I have in my notes all caps. Gale, stop running from love, Malaka. It's not a weakness, it's a strength. Your logical and rational mind can't see that.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I'd put on the board that the Big Pritch is surviving this season because I do not think they're going to pull a double race on her. And I'm still of the mindset because of the MULE and the way that the state of things are. I don't think we're going to get a big time jump at the end of season 3. I could be so stupid looking back on just saying that because we've always gotten big time skips. But I could see this being the first time where we're going to explore like multiple seasons of the same time frame because of the black hole bomb. This is an important piece of history for the genetic dynasty falling and Demerzel's growing and learning. Like I feel like a lot can be explored without us skipping ahead 100 years because Gale's just been skipping through time in the background. So I think that we might stay here for a little bit.
Yeah, if they're not going to move forward into the future, then it just that lends itself to them actually developing more of a relationship. And yeah, I just feel like there's gonna be something with Gale and him that just he's gonna, or their relationship in some way is gonna like teach her a lesson. And I think it's going to be something that maybe stops her from jumping into the future anymore. And I would be okay with that. I think it might be at this point, the way that they built the show, that could be a bit of a risk of if we're actually going to continue more seasons and we're going to jump in the future and Gale's not there. You know, I think that is a risk from like a meta point of the show, like stepping back and breaking the fourth wall. But I think I want to see her happily in love. And I think Big Pritch, I like Big Pritch as a character. He is absolutely fucking jacked and he's smart. And it's like Gale is like one of the smartest people in the world. And she deserves someone who's like close to her level of intelligence and all of that stuff. And I just like the couple that they make, you know, especially he's like a spy too. Like they're just badass as fuck and like a super power couple. And I would like to see it succeed. But also she's like a crazy important person that has to do so much stuff. And I could see it fizzling as well.
That's why it just lends itself to them staying here for a little bit in this time period. Yeah, fleshing it out and then deciding what they really wanted to do. But let's move ahead and go to Trantor, which is going to cover the rest of this episode. And it starts off with another banger of a scene, which is Demerzel talking to the Zephr in her gardens, where she's going to keep using her as a bouncing board for her thoughts. And we get some crazy history kind of reveals here, which this is like the total reveal that she was the one that destroyed the Star Bridge, right?
I tried so hard to listen to old episodes because I had this, like when she said that as I watched, I was like, I 100% brought that up on a podcast episode, but I couldn't find the evidence. I didn't want to come to this episode and be like, I swear I said it, but I have no evidence that I said it. That's exactly what I'm doing right now, but I just love it. It's so good. And then her explanation of like the way that it then creates this conversation with the Zephr of all of the things that Demerzel is worried about. And also all the things that we've talked about of like, how much free range does she have to interpret what's best for the Empire? And it seems like through this conversation that she has a somewhat pretty decent range here. And even though from her perspective, she's quite enclosed of what she can do, you know, what her options are and decisions. But I don't know. It felt like being able to bomb the Star Bridge, kill 100 million people, because in your mind it's what's best for the Empire long term, feels like you have a pretty wide field to play in.
I don't know if there's ever been a single character in TV history that every time you get more information about them, they get cooler and better in hindsight. And it just makes everything about them so great. We said it before and I'll say it again, like a Demerzel full history spinoff would be like the coolest thing this show could ever do. Just getting these glimpses of her past, and like the Zephyr knows here that she used to be the 3 laws type of robot. Then she became a 0th law. Now she's able to change her directive. And then they even loop in her religion and the idea of rebirth, where she kind of has gone through a full rebirth when she confirms it here that says, if the Demerzel of the time period during the Star Bridge saw her now, they would kill each other because they would be going against what they think is best for the Empire. It makes her so nuanced, and it's just such an interesting take on what like a robot directive is, that every time we get more, it just makes me want the Gear Wars. I want it. I want to see it on screen. It would be so cool to get the robot wars that happen. That it seems is almost like the basis of the entire universe of the Foundation. And we're going to get into more of that with the Mycogen reveals, which I think also make the random pool of the new religion a little bit better, because there was some, I don't know if it's retconning, but some subtle hints of that existing in the background, which we can talk about with the tools that Cleon the First found, but that's for later. For now, just focusing on this. It ended on a little bit of a sour note where Demerzel starts freaking out at the Zephyr and just kicks her out. I know that the Zephyr doesn't keep any of her memories every time she leaves. That was like part of the deal at the beginning. But was this too much of a heated debate that we won't see her again? Like, is there a purpose done? Or
I hope not.
Yeah, me too. I really enjoy this chemistry, or not chemistry, but these interactions.
Yeah, because this was something that we had talked about for maybe let's call it a season and a half, because we really talked about it a lot in season 2, last season, of Demerzel. She, as a character, never had a sounding board, in where we never had an opportunity to know what she actually thinks, what she actually feels. We got glimpses of it with the Zephyr that she kills in season 1. We got a little bit of it at the end of season 2 when she kind of goes off on that day and calls him the sperm and stuff like that. But this is like a dream scenario, in my opinion, for us as show watchers, of that she has a therapist almost. You know, we don't get any information besides this of like the inner workings of her mind. And it was so interesting that the Zephyr even kind of brings up this concept of that Demerzel might have a subconscious mind that is like actually working to free her from,
I love it,
these tenets that she's bound to. You know, like she says, it sounds like someone working to freedom through a loophole. And it's like Demerzel doesn't seem to be aware that that's something that she's doing. She's not purposely finding loopholes and things like that, but like, does she have a subconscious mind that is doing that? And all of these truths, in a way, or what could be interpreted as truths, getting thrown at her was obviously too much for her to take. I mean, she goes brazy and just cuts her face open and says, "Look at me, bitch."
Such a cool moment. I thought that was so badass, to be honest. She just rips it open, and it was like horrifying to see it.
Yeah. One thing, as we like pull away, they're like in the middle of the garden maze. For me, straight Westworld vibes off of that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we have a robot who's potentially, you could argue, struggling to form a level of consciousness and maybe understand their own, you know, internal inner workings. And I was just like, this just feels purposeful. Like Dolores? I just could not think. Yeah, I could not think of the maze.
Man, that show burned so bright. The first 2 seasons. First season was one of the best first seasons of TV ever. So fell on its face, though. Okay, let's move on to what I mentioned off the top of this podcast, which is just the quick new Terminus scene that we get with Doran Martell, aka Ebling, who goes to Ember, and they talk about his meeting. We saw 2 episodes, or maybe even 3 episodes ago at this point, when he actually went into the vault and talked to Vault Harry. Talks about everything. They mentioned that Harry's about to announce himself and open up the vault at the Eclipse Crossing, because he's very dramatic and he loves to be the center of attention and things like that. Very grand. I don't even know the word I'm looking for there. Grandiose. What's the word?
Grandiose.
Yeah, that's the one. That's what Harry is. But
he's
the other thing that Yeah, he really freaking is. And we need him because old Harry's been MIA and we don't even know if he has the energy to be that charismatic anymore. But the other piece of information that gets thrown around here is that it's confirmed that the Empire has Prime Radiant, right? We already knew that, but they then bring this information to Quent, the ambassador that's on Trantor, and that kind of transitions us right into her scenes, which we can probably break that up into two. If you had anything you wanted to call out between Imber and Ebling.
Now, about the two of them, I was happy to see Ebling again.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting character. Looking forward to hopefully more new Terminus stuff. I mean, they're literally dangling the concept of the vault officially being open, so we're gonna have to see that stuff, and he'll play a role in that for sure. I also, they don't use F-bombs a lot in this show. Perfectly used one right here when she finds out about they've had the Prime Radiant for 150 or whatever it is, you know, and she just drops a quick F-bomb. It's just like, yeah, totally understandable, like well placed.
Yeah. And Quent has some good scenes here. I like her more as a character. I didn't know how much we were going to really get of her, but she has a really good relationship with Dusk, and I think it's romantic. It kind of hints at that, or it's implied at the very end of these couple of scenes here. But in the throne room itself, or the danger room, whatever, I forget which one it is, they're talking, and they bring up Torrin and Beta and them being Foundation fugitives, and there's some politics there if we want to really talk about it. They talk about Maggie and the MULE, how that's all really connected. So they're really just starting to info share. And this is important because the Foundation the Empire needs to keep up with the Foundation, everybody else. And then the mic drop of the Prime Radiant, she just lays all the cards out on the table and says that. And you can see Demerzel's face, and she is just kind of mind blown that this information's out there, because now she has to assume that all of the Foundation knows this, and pretty much every power player is aware that the Prime Radiant is at Trantor. And then this ends with Dusk actually taking Quent and showing her the Prime Radiant. So a couple things here, but it's really to catch up everybody and get them all on the same page of like what the deal with the Prime Radiant is and how it's been a guiding force for the Empire these last 150 years.
I do wonder if we'll get another interaction between Vault Harry and Demerzel.
I don't bet we definitely will.
Right? It just feels like, as like I watched this scene and as we're starting to talk about it, it feels like we're setting up for that. I wonder how much of an overlap there could be between it being just like a conversation about the Prime Radiant and, you know, psychic history and things like that, and also this kind of internal thing that she's dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I just feel like I could see Harry having an interesting perspective on what she's going through internally.
I still think about that conversation they have at the end of season 2 all the time when Harry is trying, or when Demerzel's trying to convince Vault Harry, she's like, you know, you care about stopping misery. That up there's misery. And then he goes, I thought you could understand that we're talking about different scales here. And I think maybe those lessons have been hammered home after her 150 years with the Prime Radiant. Like, I would hope that it changed her a little bit, because we kind of proved already early in this episode that she does actually change and grows and learns. So maybe there's something there. And Harry kind of wants to do a little bit of a check-in to see like how his little side project is going and if it's working out for the Foundation in a good way, because that could be a really interesting conversation.
Yeah. And I also think this scene and scenes, plural, whatever you want to say, just a good way to keep Torrin, Beta at the top of our mind, and it'll be interesting to see where they pop up next. If they get caught, do they go to Foundation? Do they go to the Traitor Alliance? Who ends up finding them? Do they even get away? Do they just go back to the MULE or get captured? Who can say? But obviously, just something to monitor for future episodes.
Yeah, I agree.
But 100% Dusk and Quent have banged.
Yeah. I mean, dude, we're finding out all the time that Dusk he's a player, man. Like he always reconnects with who he was hooking up with when he was younger at times, which is hilarious. Yeah. Okay, so now the rest of this is just going to be just gloves off, hair down. We're going to have some fun, because now Day takes center stage, and he is so goddamn funny this episode, with just between the mocking of Demerzel, just the playfulness that he's bringing into really serious situations. It's so this version of Day more than anyone's in the past, and it's just amazing, because what happens first is him going right to the OG Cleon the First. And I'm happy they actually brought this back because it's been a while. I didn't know how they were going to loop it back into the story. But as we know from previous seasons, you can actually go and talk to an almost AI copied version of Cleon the First, just and get advice. And he has the ability to actually interact with you. And this conversation's awesome. Like he learns about him going and finding the tools that he reprogrammed Demerzel with from Micah Jin. He just kind of comments on like the state of things here, talking about like everything he did with murdering the people on that planet and snuffing out that new religion that we've been talking about. I don't have the name of it off the top of my head. I can scroll up unless you remember the name of that religion. I
The
believe,
Inheritance.
yes, the Inheritance. That again, like I wasn't as bothered by it as you were, where they just kind of threw it in there. But I do understand why you were bothered by it. But I hope that this works to remedy that a little bit, because it kind of implants a reason of why the Inheritance is important, and it has been important in the background with these tools. I just feel like we learned a lot here, and I really liked the conversation that these two had before Day spits on Cleon the First, before instead of doing that little ritual goodbye, because that's just the Day that we have now.
Yeah, just to comment on the whole bothered thing, I was purely bothered for the extent of 15 to 20 seconds. And when it initially happened, of like, okay, we're just have another religion that we've never known about that is now all of a sudden playing a very crucial role in what's happening. But the concept of it and the impact that it'll have are all very interesting. I'm looking forward to literally all of it. And this was just, I love that Day is when he's talking to Cleon the First, and he's talking to the old version, basically what Brother Darkness would look like as Cleon the First. And Day mentioned something of like, how about they're like alike, or when you looked like me. And then Cleon the First literally changes to that Day and has to basically say like, not exactly like you, like you look like a fucking bum.
Yeah, and his
was a fucking
armor,
kid.
dude. Cleon the First armor was badass. I love the
Yeah.
gold get up
He
that he had
had
going
to make
on.
a statement there that was just like, we're not actually the same there, boss. But I loved the connection to like the Micah Jin, his journey there, Cleon the First, and what we saw in season 2 of like him bringing the box of tools from what we assumed was Earth. I think he says Earth too.
There was a really weird quote about it, and I wrote it down at the time of us talking about that episode. I brought it up, and I still wasn't necessarily clear, because maybe they were from Earth and it just happened to find its way to the last remnant of the Inheritance religion, which kind of makes sense because it's robot based. But I swear they said that those tools were from Earth, but it makes so much more sense that it was from the planet that worshipped robots, that would be able to actually know something deeper about their programming. So I love the answer to it. I just can't remember if that line made sense now.
Well, it could make sense in that it came from Earth, in the sense that these people were just the keepers of it over all of this time, because they've been believing in the religion of it. Also, we've learned from YouTube especially, but also the Discord, our listeners are usually much smarter than we are. So I'm sure someone will clear things up for us in the comments about that stuff. But I mean, we learned too that he's basically out there, or Cleon the First was tried his best to do a targeted genocide. He didn't want to get rid of everyone, just like the specific people that believed in the religion. And now he's like, yeah, dude, like I believe in you, boss. Like, just go finish the job, man. Just don't impact the food supply. Totally misreads what Day is out here talking about.
Yeah.
I think he was pretty shocked when Day is referring to Demerzel as it, and it's kind of being like, yeah, you probably loved her, you little skunk. And then he's like, she probably didn't love you. Like, she's an it, and like, we're hardly worth loving, And then, like you said, he kind of spits at him at the end, and it just, this guy's a rock star, man. He might not, I mean, obviously from the Empire's perspective, he sucks eggs, but this guy is a rock star.
He's the real punk rock.
Yeah. Yes, he is. He fucking is. Because then the next scene with Demerzel too just is crazy too.
And you can just say that this is potentially, probably not, but potentially the final conversation this Day ever has with Demerzel, if we end up with a time skip or some crazy deaths, because the way he walks into the room, he's like, oh, fuck me and the gods. And she's like working on herself. It's so goddamn funny. And he just like hates her. So it's so easy for him to look at her as like an object, especially with what she did to Song. And that's what they talk about here. Like, he doesn't respect what she did, even though she's trying to sell it to him that she had a directive, she couldn't fight it, but she did spare Song. And then she even goes on to say that after he pushes back and's like, oh, like, what do you think about love, 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 love? Like he's like
Yeah,
doing the
yeah.
whole funny thing, whatever. He's like, you're a robot. You can't even understand what that actually means. And then she goes on to give us a new bit of robot lore in the Foundation universe, which is the ability to clasp. And I would just assume that's just almost sharing directives with another robot where you can't really even put it into words. It's just sharing your all. And I really like that idea. I don't know if it can come back unless a new robot pops up, which I think is always on the table, especially if we go to Mycogen and there's like a hidden sect of people protecting like a last robot. I could see that being a really fun storyline. But other than that, it might just be a cool tidbit that maybe is from the Foundation books.
Yeah, he is just relentless with her, man. Almost everything. I mean, he's talking about how like humans are stinky and robots are almost like kind of maybe a little stupid for thinking that humans are the ideal shape. And then he says, my thing of a mother. It's just like, damn, that's pretty hard to say. And then when she talks about the clasp and we're watching and you listening and we're like, oh, hell yeah, like that's so cool. And he goes, oh, kind of like how the wall talks to the furnace. I was like, damn, dude. And then he mocks her in the robot voice when he leaves. And it's just like, I mean, he's just going 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot, 4 shot. And we find out at the end that there's a reason why he was there. He wasn't just there to talk shit. But man, he is just brutal to her. And she just doesn't know how to deal with it. It seems like she just is unsure of any way to reconcile the relate. I mean, she again tries to tell him like I did both what was required of me and the least harmful to you, and he obviously just can't see that perspective, and that's just kind of the end of it.
So
I think they'll talk again.
It depends. If he actually escapes the planet, which we don't know yet because it kind of fades to black before we really find out.
Yeah,
it could happen. It could definitely happen. If he actually goes to this new planet, like they're going to need some main characters going there. Otherwise, what's the point?
It's not a planet.
Wait, Mycogen's not a planet?
No, they're saying we talked about this and we were kind of back and forth, and then people cleared it up on YouTube of that. It's just a level.
Oh, because they did mention that, and I didn't know if that meant like remnants of the Mycogen planet were on one of the lower levels of Trantor, like their own sect. That's how I was taking it. But
that's
okay,
how I
now that makes sense. Now that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so he's just like motorcycling down a couple levels to go and find Song.
I think they might have said like 82, 88. I don't know why those numbers are percolating.
Oh, they're talking again then. My bad. That is a total miss on my part. But thank you for clearing that up. That makes a lot of sense. But my question to you is, I also feel stupid about asking this. What is even the implications of him having stolen one of the tools? Is it just to then have a holy relic that he'll be able to walk into Mycogen and just have some reverence, I guess?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like an offering thing, an olive branch. You know, it's hard to say how much the culture or society is aware of what happened through Cleon the First. He took the gift, and it's been however long since they've had it. Are they still aware that it was taken? Will anyone that's there know? I would say probably yes. If we have Song, who is someone in this day and age who still seems to be a fervent believer of this, religion, I would assume that there's people that are probably even more into it than she is down at that level. So I think it'll just be kind of like a foot in the door. At first, when I watched the episode, I was like, oh, he's just doing it to like kind of like seal himself up for when he gave the nanobots, because that's just what he says in the scene of like, oh, like flawless when he looks at her neck. But now as we're talking about it, it feels like it'll be an offering.
Yeah. And probably don't even need to talk about that scene again later, but yeah, she does notice that the tool's missing. Demerzel it is. Yeah. So she has to know that, especially after that conversation where he's going. So you're right. Okay. You just reshaped my whole worldview of what's going on here. And I can't believe that wasn't talked about, I guess, amongst us. Did we even ever say that in previous podcasts?
I think we percolated around the idea of it, but it seemed like the concept of like they had to leave and all this stuff. It felt like they were going off planet.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's better though. That makes it all make sense of like how he had to move the way that he was moving.
Yes.
Okay, so the next two things we have to talk about are we're going to do them separately is just the rest of the episode for Day and his escape with Maven, and then we have all of the Dawn and Gale stuff. We'll save the Dawn and Gale stuff because that lends itself to just a higher level conversation. But this sequence of events with Maven, I was I was so upset that he betrayed him, and then I realized like what was going on, and I was so okay with it. But
Yeah.
also like I guess it makes the poker scene in hindsight even more important because Jimmy was calling out like why did he notice the tells and still purposely lose? It kind of all comes into play here,
Yeah.
but he first goes and actually visits Maven's household, drops his pet ferret off to the daughter. We meet the whole family for a second, and then he tells him like we got to go right now. So they Tron bike out. I've really liked seeing the infrastructure of Outer Trantor, of like not the main center palace. I thought it was cool. It kind of just adds more to what my perception of this world is, even though we still think we're on like the upper levels, and we're probably going to get to see a lot of the lower levels. And I'm really excited for that, especially if Mycogen's 80 levels deep. But it was a cool little trek he had. And I love this, that even though this day is like a clown, he doesn't care about the weight of the throne, and he just is doing his own thing. He was still perceptive enough to figure this whole plot out and then turn it against Maven. The sad part is that one, he chucks his aura, which is just
Yeah.
crazy because that's like feels like one of the most broken technologies ever. And then two, he has to lose his nanites, but that has a specific reason, which is to trick Demerzel into chasing the dead body of Maven, which he then shoves it into. Feel bad for the daughter. She's probably going to die a horrible death soon
Yeah.
because she's not going to get healed because of her dad. But also, F Maven. I really thought that he was a homie, and I should have been a little bit more suspicious of him. But luckily, Day was, and he makes his escape on the motorcycle, and he kind of fades to black before we pick up with where he ends up. So it was a really good ending, and he had such a good episode. I love Day. I'll say that every single episode of this podcast that we ever freaking do. And man, I'm just rooting for him so hard.
I love the way they shot this too. Just like at night, it's really only lit through like the headlights of the bikes, and like the camera's like on the ground, like so far away from them as Day's like walking up to his body. And I was just like, damn, this is fucking great television as I was watching it. You know, the betrayal, I was surprised. I wrote in my notes no with like 18 O's.
Me
And then
too.
it's like, okay, and then it makes sense. And it's like, oh, I get it. And then the poker scene, like you said, it's like, oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense and
Yeah.
makes Day even cooler. And then they have the narration basically over top of it as he's riding away of no one can escape Empire, not even Empire, but I'm going to see how far I can go. And it's like, yes, hell yeah. I just want to watch that. Almost we can lose the rest of it. No, I'm just kidding. But like, he's just such a good character. I love the storyline so much. And we get, like you said, Demerzel is informed that Day's nanites went offline basically outside in the area. She finds that he took the pen thing. I'm of a mind that she's smart enough to kind of maybe piece together what's happening. I feel like she could probably also talk to Cleon the first, is my guess. You know, I don't think that like they would or she would not be able to do that. It feels like something that like the Cleons would think like, oh, this is only something we can do. And then like she actually can just talk to him about what they talked to him about, you know, and get all that info. So she's gonna, you know, be tracking him and they're gonna try and find him. And it's gonna be great television.
It really is. And I would have put everything in my bank account on the fact that when they're doing the jump back and forth between Day and between Day's escape and what we're about to talk about, which is Dawn's and Gale's escape, when they're running through the tunnel and they see a motorcycle, I want it so badly for these three to squad up. I feel like this is like the best version of Dawn. It's the coolest version of Day, and Gale getting the powerhouse of having the resource of both of these would have just made so much sense to me. I really thought they were going to group up and we are going to have at least one episode of them traveling together. That obviously doesn't happen. We can shift over to the other two characters if you don't have any final thoughts on Day.
I'm just like, it's so juicy to think of all of the like matchups with Day, like Day and Gale, Day and Big Pritch, Day and Preem. Like it's just
Day and the Mule, like we were saying, that would be
like
so fun.
He just
Yeah.
would be so good with everyone, and we'll find people, I'm sure, at the Mycogen level that are fun and that play off of him very well. I'm just so excited about it. He looks so cool too in the armor and the bike. Like it's just
Yeah.
he's killing it right now.
So Maven too, like with the suit, like just the helmet,
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
thing looked really good.
And
And
also
just
it makes me feel better that like I think we're kind of both agreeing, and it feels like the show's at this point where we're not gonna have this time skip because we've been sad at the end of every season of like we're losing this Dawn Dusk Day.
Mhm.
And it feels like these guys might stick around for a little bit, which I'm very hopeful for because, like we've said, they're just the best.
Yeah. And I don't think he's mentioned, and I don't know what he's really going to do about the fact that Song does not have her memories, but this is a reminder that she has no recollection of her time with Day. I believe that's what Demerzel said. So that's going to be something where he's going to have to convince her and make her re-fall in love with him and stuff like that. So if they,
Yeah, I can't wait to find out about the religion stuff. I know we've talked around it. I think Fizzo for real, Christina BCG, I believe in YouTube, they've kind of been like telling us like it's the robots and the religion and stuff is like it's this huge role, and there's been all of these hints, and it just feels like it's building towards something really, really cool.
yeah,
And I just and this day is the perfect, I think, perspective or viewpoint or like kind of traveler for us to attach onto as we learn more. It's just gonna be a good time.
I agree. So the last thing we need to talk about is everything to do with Dawn, who maybe a complaint of the one complaint I'll bring up for the episode is here is which is like I wish they made a bigger, unless I just missed a line. I wish they made a bigger deal about Gale traveling just so easily from Ignis to getting here because they meet in person. I know that she says to Big Pritch earlier, like it's time to call in our Dawn card here, but I thought it would have been a bigger deal or at least a little bit more difficult for her just to show up on Trantor in the flesh and meet with him, but maybe not at the same time because everybody probably thinks she's dead. So there's not a real reason to be using the surveillance to find if Gale exists or anything like that. So I guess I'm kind of talking myself out of that, but either way, this conversation is just about recruiting Dawn full on. Like he's about to ascend to the center throne and he has to make a decision. Is he going to lean in with the Foundation and do what he thinks is right for humanity and follow Gale, or is he going to stay behind and think that he can do more here on Trantor? And he decides that with the help of Gale that they're going to leave. And he even gets introduced to the Mentalic ability here, which was really cool. And the first time we've ever seen Gale's eyes light up like the mules. So I guess it's a choice when they're going to actually do that every once in a while. But they did use the cinematography to make it all like, weird when she was tricking them, which was cool and shows you kind of power scales her a little bit before they end up leaving the foundation or the planet. And she goes, "We call ourselves the Second Foundation." And that's the moment when they fly off and jump to Ignis.
I think Demerzel is gonna faint when she realizes that she's lost two empires.
Well, Dusk is going to be hype because he's not becoming Brother Darkness anytime soon.
Oh yeah, I mean 100%. I didn't even think about that. He is totally gonna be
He's good
excited
for a little bit,
about
yeah.
probably 50% of this. But yeah, I mean, I guess Dawn's gonna be so out of reach for her.
Mhm.
But also she should be able to track him via the nanites. So like
Yes,
is
I was
Empire
just
then
going to
gonna
say
be
that. Yeah.
aware of Ignis? Is something on the planet stopping that? Does Gale have a plan for that? It feels like something that she would be aware of, or at the very least they'll talk about. And I could see
Mhm.
Dawn being like, that they can track me or whatever. So we'll see what becomes of that. I think in terms of like how easy it is to her to get in and out of Trantor, I just feel like that's where the Empire's at right now.
Yeah.
They are kind of like
Yeah.
content and chill. They're weaker than they have been. They're kind of almost chilling in the grand scheme of things. They're so focused, they being Empire, the three of them, well, two of them, and Demerzel of like psychohistory, like the big picture of stuff that like the small scale things don't really seem to be something they care so much about. So it seems like
Mhm.
it's kind of whatever.
Yeah, that's fine. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily bother me that much. I was just calling
Nah.
it out because it felt like she just teleported and there wasn't like a transition scene or more of like a sketched out plan of what she was doing here. But
Yeah.
obviously having Dawn on their side is an incredible resource that they're going to be able to use.
Yeah, it was interesting that the like Gail's like, you got to get the enclosure stuff. Was her old, like, you know, last episode. And then we find out this episode that they've made the Galactic Council strong, Second Foundation. And I couldn't tell if that's like they gave them the ability to be like a legitimate political player, or they've like, you know, like they have so much in on the council. Because I feel like, couldn't they just like work a little bit if it's the second one and be like, yo, you guys should get the enclosure? I guess they needed Empire to bring it to the council to then utilize all of their inside people to approve it. But it just felt like that was something that happened. I wonder how much impact the council will continue to play.
That was like legitimately the last note I had down that I was going to bring up. I couldn't remember if it was a Big Pritch and Gale conversation or if it was a Dawn and Gale conversation about strengthening the Galactic Council.
Yeah.
I can't rationalize in my head what the purpose of them almost amplifying the coming on of the third crisis, like all the way back to episode 1, when they're saying like the Galactic Council's against the Foundation, and they're talking about the traitors. Like, why are they amplifying this? There has to be more of a reason that Gale wants this, and maybe like the Prime Radiant will explain it, or maybe Vault Harry will talk about it a little bit more. But I really can't. It's not clicking in my head what's going on there with the Galactic Council, and what's the play. Like, why is this better for the Foundation in the future?
Only thing I could think of is that, like, because they're aware of it and like what's going to happen, that they can almost in some way impact the way that it happens. And then also it's kind of so they can get past it maybe
Quicker.
in the way that they want and as quick as possible. That would be the guess that I would have.
It
Because they know in a sense that like you can't
addressed-
avoid the crisis, but like if
Mhm.
you know what it is, when it's coming, and like what's going to happen, then like, and you have all of the time that they've had, then maybe you can position yourself and pretty much the galaxy in a way that makes it easier.
I can buy it. And it does make me feel a little bit better about my complaint, which was the lack of Galactic Council in the past. I know some people in Discord and YouTube said like, and even the show I think had that line where they're irrelevant unless the Empire's weak, but this makes it a little bit better for me that the Foundation in the behind the scenes was actually amplifying them. So it all kind of works, just as everything does. This show is so rewatchable because of things like this. Like, this episode is just like the Demerzel backstory episode, where it's going to make all of season 3 so much better when you go and watch it a second time and you're prepping for the next season. It's just such a goddamn good show. I feel like everybody should be watching this. I'm hoping it's getting the numbers. I feel like it's always trending on the Apple charts, and IMDb scores are great, but there's not that many reviews, which is always a little scary. Like, kind of like Wheel of Time, who had such good season 3 reviews, but it didn't have the numbers that they cared about. So I'm hoping that that's not the case for this show, because it's just all around. It's beautiful. It's well written. It's fun. It's well acted. Everything about it's so interesting, and just everything it's been being built up to, just as our Discord member said, it's so sure of itself. Like, it knows where it's going. And every time they give us new lore, or every time they throw new characters at us, I just gravitate towards every single one of them. It's just so good. And this is episode 4. So next episode will be the halfway point of the season. And so far, so good, man. Like, I feel like this season is slapping.
I hope this gets a higher rating on IMDb. I mean, I don't know how fruitless of a hope that is, but it's just, I feel like it deserves it. I feel like it deserves to have great reviews out there. And I also think, like, I was thinking about this as I was, like reading the comments that we get on YouTube and like the conversations that we have in Discord. And like, I feel like when we do shows on the podcast, like, you can take a step back and like look at not only the level of engagement, but like the type of engagement, like the type of comments that we're getting and the discussions that we're having with people. And it's just like so obvious that this is not only like a good show, but like a great show to talk about. Like the comments are so cool. People that have read the books too, like they bring such an interesting perspective, and just like the concepts that the show is throwing at us are just great and entertaining.
World building's up there,
and they're thought-provoking. Yeah, like all of it. It's just like a very enjoyable experience.
I love it. This has been such a fun Rooks and Vets to catch up, and like watching it live, watching with the screeners. It's just been a joy. I'm really excited to watch the next episode.
I had so much fun without Jimmy. Damn it.
Much quicker too.
Yeah. I'm playing with the Jim. All right. I think that that's going to do it. Before we get into the end of the spiel, I guess a little update. I'm on episode 3 of Predictive History on YouTube. I'm learning all
Nice.
about psychohistory in the real world. So I'm through 3 episodes. So I'll keep everyone updated. We're learning all about religion, baby. So it's good. Maybe I'll have something to say when we get into the initiative, the inheritance, which I assume will play a big role in, if not next episode, the episode after that. And we'll be here covering it on the core, all things Apple TV Plus. We'll be here weekly for 6 more weeks. We'll also be over on Binge Empire. If you are watching Dexter, I believe Resurrection, and if it's wrong, I apologize. But if you're watching that and you're not listening to the Binge Empire coverage of it, you're doing yourself a disservice. That's Jimmy and Kathleen, a very dynamic duo, and they've been having a blast. The feedback, I mean, the Discord page on Dexter pops off. It is always has like 20 to 25 messages after every single episode. So the conversation's flying. I know the internet's been loving that show, and we're covering it and we're loving it as well. We're also covering The Sandman, which is happening over on Netflix, and then The Initiative, which is an adaptation of a Stephen King book. That's over on MGM Plus. So we're also covering that over on Binge Empire. And yeah, if you like what you heard, the best way to support us is obviously you can join the conversation. So via the YouTube comments, via the Discord. But also, I think really the number one way to support us is always going to be giving us a 5-star review on whatever podcast audio app you're listening on. That's just the best thing for the algorithm. It shows that people enjoy the content. It's showing everyone that people are listening as well. And yeah, Jimmy might say more, but that's really all that I got. So we will see you guys in exactly 1 week for episode 5.
Bye.
For the last time, I guess. Yeah, we're the core. Thanks for listening.